There are stories in history that feel like shadows, felt, but never fully seen. Tonight, I want to take you into one of those shadows. It begins with a whisper found not in a famous chronicle, not in a royal archive, but carved in secret, by hands that were fading. It begins with a phrase barely the size of a thumbprint, scratched into stone beneath an empire that wanted it buried forever. And yet, somehow, it survived. They say the great empires of the past wrote their victories in marble and gold. But the truth, real truth, often hides in the smallest places. In faint carvings. In forgotten rooms. In prayers that should never have existed. That is the story of the women of St. Catherine's Convent, taken during the Ottoman conquest of 1470, and the quiet, stubborn light they refused to let die. Imagine Thessaly in the last days before its fall. The air thick with smoke from distant fires, the echoes of marching boots rolling down the hills like thunder. The nuns of St. Catherine's were not warriors. They were teachers, healers, caretakers of orphans, readers of scripture, keepers of quiet rituals passed down for centuries. They heard rumors long before the soldiers arrived, rumors of Mem Too's new strategy, one far more terrifying than simple destruction. Not the Roman tactic of swift execution. Not the Mongol fury of burning cities. Something colder. Something calculated. Mehmed understood something most conquerors overlooked. Kill a believer quickly, and you create a martyr. But erase a believer slowly, and you erase the memory of their faith. And so, when the walls finally fell and the soldiers stormed in, the nuns were not met with immediate death. Instead, they faced something far more deliberate. The soldiers gathered them in the courtyard, exhausted, hungry, stripped of everything familiar, and issued one choice. Renounce your faith, accept the empire's blessing, and live in comfort, or refuse and face uncertainty. Some were young. Some were old. Some could barely stand. But every recorded account, from Venetian letters to scattered notes in Ottoman administrative reports, agrees. Not one woman accepted the offer. You would think that defiance would bring execution. But Mehmed had no interest in martyrs. So the women were marched out of Thessaly under guard, forced into days of travel with minimal food and almost no rest. Not a massacre, just the slow grinding away of strength, identity, and hope. By the time they reached Constantinople, fewer than half could walk unaided. For most people, this is where the story ends. They vanish from the written record. But the empire had plans for them. Beneath the Topkapi Palace, below the chambers of sultans and the glitter of jewels and silks, were service quarters, rooms where servants lived unseen, where labor was quiet and constant. The remaining nuns were placed there not as prisoners in chains, but as domestic attendants. A polite phrase masking a truth. They were isolated from their world, separated, kept under watch, given new routines meant to slowly break the old ones.
No sermons. No scripture.
No community. Only work, silence, and the empire's relentless attempt to reshape their minds. But here is where the story becomes truly remarkable. For centuries, historians believed the nuns were simply absorbed into the palace system and disappeared from memory. There were vague hints, a few administrative lines noting resistant servants, the occasional Venetian traveler whispering about Christian women hidden in the palace, but nothing that proved their fate. Then, in 2011, restoration teams excavating beneath the palace found a small bricked-off chamber, a space no larger than a storage room. No records mentioned it. No blueprints mapped it. Dust coated everything in a thick, suffocating layer, untouched for centuries. And inside, the walls were covered, absolutely covered, with hand-carved crosses. Tiny ones, large ones, shaky ones made by trembling hands, beautiful ones carved deeply with deliberate strikes. Between them ran lines of faint Greek text, fragments of psalms, whispered prayers, and a phrase repeated again and again. The light shines in the darkness. Not a grand rebellion. Not a dramatic uprising. Just a room where women who were supposed to surrender their identity carved it deeper into stone. Day after day. Year after year. They had been told to forget who they were. And instead, they left the clearest evidence of exactly who they were. This discovery changed everything. Cross-referencing the carvings with Ottoman duty rosters, Venetian letters smuggled out of the city, and old monastic records revealed something astonishing. The women had found each other. Even under watch, even separated, they found ways to gather, even briefly, in this hidden chamber. A break in the routine. A moment of stolen silence. A place where they could be themselves for a breath of time. They used broken pottery shards as tools. They carved until their fingers bled. They left behind a record the empire never intended anyone to see. If you're enjoying this journey into forgotten truth, into the parts of history that were meant to stay buried, consider subscribing. This channel dives into the shadows of the past, places where secrets wait, untouched, until someone is willing to look. And I promise you, there are many more stories like this waiting to be uncovered. No one knows exactly how long the nuns lived. Ottoman records become quiet. Venetian testimony mentions a final group of stubborn women in service beneath the palace around the 1480s. Some may have died in service. Some may have been transferred. Perhaps one or two managed to escape into the Greek quarter. But one thing is certain, they were not forgotten. Not really. They engraved their existence into stone. Archaeologists found crosses layered on top of older crosses, as if each new group of women added their marks over the ones who came before. A chain of remembrance carved into a place meant to erase memory. At the center of one wall, half hidden under soot, was a larger inscription. Even if we are silent, these stones will speak. It was a quiet prophecy. And it came true. What makes this story so powerful is not grand heroism. It is endurance. It is the kind of resistance that leaves no battlefield, no banners, no songs. Just scratches in stone. Just faith held quietly in the dark. Just the echo of women who refused to vanish, even though the world expected them to. And there is still mystery here. Why was the room sealed? Who hid it? Was it intentional? Some scholars think a sympathetic palace worker bricked it up after the women were transferred, hoping to protect the carvings. Others believe it was an administrative decision, just another unused space sealed off without thought, accidentally preserving the last traces of an extinguished community. But whatever the reason, the result is the same. The light they carved into the walls outlived the empire that tried to extinguish it. If stories like this, stories of hidden truths, forgotten voices, and the quiet defiance of the past, speak to you, subscribe so you never miss what comes next. There are countless secrets still waiting for us. Because in the end, history is not only written by the victors. Sometimes, it is carved by the powerless. Sometimes, it survives in the smallest marks left by hands the world tried to break. Sometimes, entire forgotten lives whisper back to us from behind a wall no one was supposed to open. And tonight, those whispers remind us of something simple, something eternal. You can be surrounded by darkness. You can be buried beneath an empire. You can be isolated, silenced, starved, erased in every official record. And still, the light can shine. It shone for the women of St. Catherine's. It shone in the secret room beneath top copy. It shone in the carvings trembling across the stone. It shines now, as we tell their story aloud, probably for the first time in centuries. And if you walk away with anything from this forgotten chapter of history, let it be this. Empires rise. Empires fall. But truth, the real kind, is patient. It waits. It survives where no one looks. And sometimes, it hides behind a wall for 500 years, just so you can hear it today. Thank you for listening. And remember, this world is full of secrets. Some are lost. Some are buried. And some are still waiting for the right pair of eyes to find them. Until next time, keep searching the shadows. The past is not done speaking.